Hi, my name is Grace, and I reported on the book Holes. I think Holes is a great book. If you like to read books that have a lot of suspense, then Holes is the book for you. This book had so much action and was written so well, it literally only took me 2 days to read it. It was so exciting. Even though some things in the book couldn't happen, like curses and gypsies, this book is very relatable. In the beginning of the story, Stanley Yelnats gets arrested for stealing a pair of shoes that belonged to a famous sports player and cost a small fortune. Though Stanley was blamed for the crime, none of this mess was his fault at all. Stanley had a choice of how to get punished: jail or Camp Green Lake. Stanley chose camp. You might think that camp would be a very obvious decision, but in my mind, Camp Green Lake is much worse than a jail. The leader of the camp the warden, she wanted loot. Several years back, she had lots of treasure, but a woman buried it. At camp, the criminals had to dig a hole every single day. This hole had to be 5 feet wide and 5 feet tall. The boys were told there was no reason for digging these holes besides that they were criminals, but the reason of this was so hopefully one of the boys would find the money. "This ain't no Girl Scout camp," Mr. Sir, who worked at Camp Green Lake, would often say. On the way to camp, Stanley was thinking that his hard life was because of his no-good, dirty, rotting great-great-grandfather. Stanley's grandfather was to follow some instructions given to him by a gypsy named Zeroni. He did not follow her instructions, and the Yelnats legend is that the gypsy cursed his entire family. Later in the book, Stanley finds out that his family really is cursed. When Stanley arrives at Camp Green Lake, he meets some new friends. The children treated like slaves had strange nicknames like Magnet, Zero, and Armpit. The next day, Stanley woke up early to dig his first hole. After some time, Stanley finishes his hole after all of his other friends. The same process went on for several days. Those days turned into long, long weeks. At this point, you're probably thinking that I'm crazy to call this book suspenseful, but wait. One day, Stanley found some treasure. This treasure was a clue to the loot that the warden was looking for. Unfortunately, Stanley had made a deal with his friend X-Ray. The deal was this: if Stanley found treasure in his hole, he had to give it up to X-Ray. Then X-Ray would report the treasure to the warden. X-Ray would then get the rest of the day off. Stanley reluctantly hands over the treasure to X-Ray, and he turns it into the warden, getting the day off. Everyone now has to dig by X-Ray's hole and hope to find the treasure. It becomes obvious to the boys that the warden was looking for the treasure, even though she did not tell them this. Stanley knew that they were all digging in the wrong spot. A few more days later, Zero had had enough of digging holes. He ran away from the camp. Stanley and his friends assumed that Zero would come back, but after several days there was still no sign of him. Stanley decided to go after him, even though Zero was probably already dead. But Stanley's fear wasn't of Zero being dead. It was that Zero was still alive, crawling on the hot sand, starving and dehydrated. After a long time of looking, Stanley finds Zero. He was still alive, and it turns out Zero had been living on raw onions and a kind of liquid he found that he calls sploosh. Stanley and Zero must survive out by themselves, which is going to be hard with Stanley's curse. There is only one way for the curse to be broken. Stanley must carry the great-great-grandson of the gypsy who cursed his grandfather, Zeroni, up a huge mountain. Will Stanley break the curse, and will he ever see his real home again? Or will Stanley and Zero end up turning around and head back to camp and die a slave digging holes at the dreaded Camp Green Lake? Read Holes and find out what happens to Stanley and his friends.